It's Champion Joe's 50th anniversary, the classic boxing series that I know pretty much nothing about. Whatever it is, 50 years is nothing to scoff at. And what better way to celebrate than to revitalise that story for a new era? Enter Megalo Box, a desert punk predecessor to the series in question. But not all good stories age gracefully. Does it hold up among its modern rivals, or does Megalo Box miss its mark? In a world plagued with poverty, a competitive sport is fought between men with machine-powered punches in rings worldwide. Megalo boxing is the world's most popular sport, but underground fighter Junk Dog is sick of losing to opponents he could easily beat in fixed matches for his sleazy coach Nanbu. When the Shiroto company announces an international Megalo boxing tourney for only the best of the best, Junk Dog is determined to climb the rankings and take on a real opponent, Yuri, the world's champion of Megalo boxing. The story of Megalo Box is laser focused. Rarely does it ever stray from its singular direction, Joe's rivalry with Yuri, and every aspect of the show from the contrasting character designs to the narrative of the OP reflects this. On its way to the fight however, it still has 11 or 12 episodes to fill, and it has no trouble packing them. Because while the show has a clear direction, it's not the main attraction. The main attraction is all the pieces standing in the way of the showdown we all know is coming at the end of the show. Though it starts out slow paced, it really gets going after the first few episodes. It establishes almost a formula of introducing the next big opponent for Joe. We get to know them and what their goals are, and then we get to the fight where it all comes to a head and their story is resolved in the ring with Joe. It's not a bad formula, and it takes care to make sure it doesn't get stale by telling interesting stories around that framework and making sure the episode's fight promotes meaningful development. Despite being a boxing show, although it knows the rules, it doesn't revolve around the inner psychology of the game. Instead, it focuses on the struggles of its characters, with the boxing matches as dramatic set pieces. Though its writing is far from perfect, sometimes the plot relies on characters making uncharacteristic decisions in order to keep itself moving along. These occasional contrivances might irritate you, though the rest of the show does a good job of painting over that flaw. Coming back to the formula, almost everything that happens in this show is predictable from a long ways away, if you're intimately familiar with this type of story that is. Megalo Box reapproaches classic punk anime motifs and themes. It's an underdog story featuring an intense rivalry with themes of poor versus rich, lawlessness, and emancipation from the criminal underworld. It follows those beats of those kind of stories to the letter, but has so much fun doing it you barely think about how easy it is to see it all coming. Its fights are so exciting, well choreographed, and when the main plot starts to come together at the end of the second act, the show really comes into its own element. Megalo Box is great at remaining totally consistent, using visual storytelling and building suspense so confidently, it's hard not to appreciate its moxie. Carrying the story, the characters of Megalo Box aren't all complex or even developed much. Not that they need to be. The protagonist Joe most exemplifies this, a young thrill seeker with talent in the ring. He's your very typical, yet solid and well-rounded underdog. And I've pretty much said all there is to say about him right there. That's the thing about Joe, is that he's an extremely simple character in the way he thinks and acts. Joe wants to fight for real, and he wants to fight against the champ under his terms because he's always chasing that adrenaline high. It's why he's always burning rubber across the wastelands on his motorcycle, and it's what fuels his urge to go after the best boxer in the world. He wouldn't have gotten anywhere without his coach Nanbu and encouragement from street urchin Sachio. Of all the characters in the show, Nanbu is the most well developed. He's characterised by the debts he owes, and while initially coming off as pathetic and underhanded, manages to win us over with his genuine compassion for others, and his willingness to make sacrifices for other people. While Sachio's role is considerably minor, he, Nanbu and Joe make a compelling team. Their camaraderie is one of the best things about Megalo Box. We cheer for them through highs and lows as they pick one another back up through thick and thin, always chasing that dream of fighting to the top and escaping the confines of their own embroilment in the world of crime. Between them and the champion though are many tough opponents. They aren't just villains of the week though, they're entire characters unto themselves with goals, ideals and dreams of their own. We can sympathise with them as easily as Joe and crew as they share that passion for Megalo boxing. Sometimes the entire episode can become about them, which helps pick up Joe's slack when it comes to character development. They aren't bad people at all, and the only thing setting them against Joe is the competition. Megalobox's gritty, classic desert punk aesthetic is reminiscent of late 90s, early 2000s grunge anime, like Ergo Proxy and Serial Experiments Lane. That highly specific type of jank that goes full circle and comes back around to looking super good. It really feels like an anime that was made in the early 2000s, but with modern production standards. There's a strong thematic presence in all aspects of visual design. Even the opposing designs of Joe's side and Shiroto's side are representative of opposing eras of anime, as well as establishing a lot of character and just the way the two contrast with one another. Those designs paint a clear picture of each character and their roles in the story. The only thing that really lets the visual ensemble down is the OP, which is just okay. It's pretty much the barest of bones in terms of visual storytelling, and for folks who like to dig into their OPs for significance and symbolism, imagery and composition, it's a letdown. The ED is even more disappointing, not even any animation to really speak of. Now Megalobox was directed by Yo Moriyama, whose previous work included prop designer on This is his first go in the director's chair, and he actually does an astounding job here. Maybe his experience with Tango the Evil gave him a good idea of how exactly to work with a tight budget, which this show is not shy about. Its sketchy, rusty style makes it easier to cut art and animation corners without hampering the viewing experience. Sometimes the budget can really show its true colours, and that limitation makes its way into certain camera movements and very occasional reuse of sequences. But while it's clearly a budget show, it does amazingly with what it has. Anyways, who could hate that rough, rustic look? Every facet of the show's visual aesthetic drives home the idea of being an underdog and going up against the big boys in their ring. It's uglier than most shows this past season, but it's come out on top against all the odds. The perfect theme for a show produced on the cheap. As for the soundtrack, it's the thing that completes Megalobox's whole atmosphere. Its tracks are a hip-hop synth fusion, always super catchy and evocative of the era of anime which its look is representing. It's maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but it suits this particular show and what it's going for perfectly. There are some hip-hop music video segments though that appear very abruptly, coming off as an artist trying to push his new album or something to that effect. That's not the case at all. The artist for these songs produced the entire soundtrack. But if you're not a hip-hop kind of person at all, then these scenes will come off as jarring, lame and disruptive to the flow of the story. But despite that, Megalobox is absolutely on point and consistent in the way it presents a retro story, with a keen attention to detail for what makes the postmodern grunge anime of old so appealing to the eyes and ears. Megalobox is not revolutionary. It doesn't break new ground with its story, and its characters exist to service that story's needs. If you're looking for that next big stride for the medium, you're not going to find it here. But it doesn't need to be the next big groundbreaking idea to blow you away. It's a show with so much appeal in both presentation and the simplicity of its story that it'll suck you into its rhythm anyway. It has an air of confidence in its ability to entertain that not a lot of anime have nowadays, and that confidence goes a long way. And in a medium that is trended towards bright colours, gloss and beautification, Megalobox dares to look truly rustic, and you've got to admire it for that. Although it is a budget production, it makes sure to at least pull something from its sleeve in every area of production as it gears towards its big finale. Though said finale may be a little limp for some, it's also an appropriate one. Devoid of anything to do with Champion Joe, Megalobox stands proudly on its own 2 feet, and I'm sure I'm not alone in hoping to see more of this show in the future. All 13 episodes of Megalobox are available for legal streaming on Crunchyroll. If you just can't get enough of boxing, then I'd recommend Hajime no Ippo. I'll be honest, I don't have much experience with it, but you really can't go wrong with a classic, can you? Or if you want some more psychology out of your sports anime, then watch Kuroko's Basketball. It presents the psychology and player performance of its games like nothing else, bordering on superpower anime. It's an amazingly fun time. Hopefully one of these will be to your liking. If you liked what you saw and want to see more, remember to subscribe or follow me on Twitter for the latest updates. Links are down in the description, and until next time, cheerio.